It's pretty rare, but we're actually not going to start today with the very front of the field, which means something's gone down, because it's very rare for us not to start with the top three on a race review, because it feels like coming out of this race, what everyone or nearly everyone is talking about is this two-stop mandatory strategy that was implemented for this race only. We've never had it before at this Grand Prix, and it led to some very interesting results. I've seen some split opinion. I guess first, very broad question, what did you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, we know famously that Monaco, with the current regulations that Formula One has with these cars, is in trouble. It's not producing exciting racing. The qualifying is by far the most exciting thing about this racetrack, and the Sunday is failing to deliver on a regular occurrence. So Formula One have tried to create something very new, this two-stop mandatory strategy. We've not seen something really like it before in Formula One, and the idea is that you had to run, of course, two different sets of compounds, but you had to run three different tyres, three different sets of tyres, two different compounds. Coming into this, I hoped we would see tactical masterclass. We'd see something a bit different. We'd see drivers coming into it and going, right, I'm actually going to stop really early or really late, chance a safety car, catch up to the queue, whatever it might be. We did see some tactical play happen, but not the way I wanted to see it happen. It ended up being silly games. It ended up being a little bit embarrassing, where some cars were going 7-8 seconds a lap slower. I think at one point, Norris up front was doing maybe a 1:16, and the Williams cars who were backing up, and Lawson, who was doing some backing up, were doing 1:20s, 1:21. So 5-6 seconds a lap there difference is bizarre. I mean, you get it in Monaco quite regularly, where they're trying to save tyres and do a one-stop in previous races. But here, it was so intentional that it almost became laughable, a little bit embarrassing. And I never want to come to a Formula One Grand Prix where the aim for some drivers is, how slow can I go in order to make this strategy work for someone else? I didn't enjoy it. There was a lot of gamesmanship going on here that I wasn't a fan of. James Vowles very much said it over the radio, where he said, I don't want to have to do this, but it's the only way I can get anything out of this Grand Prix. That's not the kind of racing I turn up to Formula One to see. I don't think it's worked. What about you, Ben?
So I was not a fan in the slightest. I hated it.
Why? Tell us why.
I don't mind. You know what? No, I'm not going to say don't mind. I love strategy when it comes to races. There are some that don't think that it should be a really important part of what we do. I disagree with that. I think strategy can really enhance a Grand Prix, but it needs to be a complementary factor. It needs to be a contributing factor. It can't be the only reason you go racing. And that's what we saw. We had teams playing games very intentionally. And again, you can't blame them for doing that, because they were taking advantage of the rules in front of them. But I think James Vowles said it best when he said, I don't want to go racing this way. And that's a real problem when you have got someone being very honest, team boss of one of your 10 teams, saying, I don't want to be doing this, because he knows it's bad entertainment. Ultimately, I guess in hindsight, it wasn't going to improve the racing, because we added pit stops, but we didn't, that's not going to help the on-track battling.
Correct.
And like you said, when you've got Liam Lawson going at a 1:20, 1:21, allowing Isaac Hadjar to make two pit stops before half the field had even done one, it's just crazy. Like, we are watching Formula One primarily to watch fast cars go around a circuit, and when a driver is intentionally going 10-11 seconds slower than the fastest guy did in qualifying on the Saturday, that's not okay. Like, that's not good. Like, I love this sport. Obviously, this sport is our job. Like, I'm obviously going to keep watching. If it wasn't, would I have switched off? I wouldn't have been far off. Like, it was that bad.
Yeah, it's interesting that you phrase it like that. I was watching it with my mum and dad. And my mum and dad have been lifelong Formula One fans. And they are in the same mindset of me that the Monaco Grand Prix year on year is the worst Grand Prix of the year. They find it boring. They think the result is done within a couple of laps. So you can very quickly switch your brain off and go, it's on in the background, but I know what's going to happen. And those kind of fans are the people that, if you get it wrong too many times, will go, I'm just a bit bored. You and me will keep watching.
Yeah.
We'll keep watching the most boring one over and over again because we absolutely adore it and we get to do this. But people like that, people like you perhaps, who maybe have picked it up this season, will watch something and go, I'm talking about this race. I'm talking about with my friends maybe or with my family, but are you talking about the Monaco Grand Prix for the right reasons? I want to talk about it for a daring move up the inside of Rascasse. I want to talk about it for that move into Saint-Devoux, or where someone does perform a brilliant strategy maneuver that gets them out in front and it maybe wins them the race in the last moment. What I don't want is farcical conversations of fake sharp braking into braking zones because they're driving so slowly that they're holding up 11 of the 17 cars on the racetrack, and people are 2 laps down because they're so much slower than the leaders that silly games need to be played to gain any kind of advantage, and it sucks the natural competitiveness out of the sport. And once again, has it addressed the actual issue at Monaco, or is it like putting lipstick on a donkey? The donkey's still a donkey at the end of the day. It's now just got lipstick on it. It hasn't really changed anything. You can't go wheel to wheel at Monaco. The racing was not any better than it normally is.
Yeah, and it's not like this is a brand new topic of conversation that Monaco doesn't provide great racing. And, you know, we've complimented Monaco many times for what it provides on a Saturday and what it provides in qualifying. But when it comes to race day, like, this isn't abnormal. It just added, I don't even think chaos is the right word, but it just added, games that didn't enhance the experience and didn't help with any of the bits that really need help. I think this whole weekend was another advert for, the way that I would want to go racing at Monaco, which is we don't.
We don't. Yeah.
We have like a time trial setting on a Saturday that gives points, and then we have some sort of charity race or some sort of heritage weekend. I don't know what it is exactly, but I wouldn't keep what we have right now. I think today was an advert for that, sadly.
Yeah, Monaco has come and gone. And I said this to you, Ben, before we started recording. You've seen Formula E come here. We've seen Formula 2 come here. Racing can be good at Monaco. Historically, we have had good races at Monaco where passes have been made and fights have happened and wheel-to-wheel action has occurred. But when you're driving, a car that's the length almost of a double-decker bus in London, you can't go wheel to wheel. It's just not feasible. And unfortunately, it's tracks like Monaco that pay the price because the way that modern Formula is set up does not work at a street track like Monaco. So we either need to change the cars, or unfortunately, we need to change the way the track is working and what the Formula works at this track.
Yes, sadly, I very much agree with that. And, we'll get into some of the games that were played from the likes of VCarb and Williams and Mercedes a bit later on in this episode. But it's unfortunate that if Formula One is still gaining momentum, like as a sport, it's doing very well viewership wise in the United States this year, even compared to the last couple of years. Like, there is a real opportunity for F1 globally. I pick out the United States very specifically, but F1 does very well in sort of the 18 to 49 demographic, which is a key indicator for future success. And then we still maintain that this race is needed because of the heritage, because of how incredible it looks in Monaco. And
but when you've got Indy 500 later on in the
options,
day, right? Indy 500 is on today. As we record this, it's, they're doing the warm-up. They're doing all the chit-chat. It's getting ready to go. Is Monaco the worst part of the Triple Crown right now? I think so. I think Le Mans is a sensation. It's a spectacle to go to, a festival. The Indy 500 is drawing in fans from all over the world who don't even pay attention to IndyCar, but they'll watch the Indy 500. If you tuned in only to watch Monaco, are you coming away impressed? Are you really going to go, wow, what a feast of racing for the eyes that I've just consumed? Or will you go, this is a bit confusing because everyone's got 2 stops to do. I don't really know where it's meant to be going, and I'm kind of bored.
I think, like, when it comes to tyre management as well, because we've often seen in previous years that no matter how soft the tyres you bring to Monaco, it just leads to more and more management rather than more pit stops and more interesting races. And I think that was proven on the very last lap of this Grand Prix where, Lando Norris, who had been on the hard tyres for, 25, 30 laps at that point, he was still able to set the fastest lap of the Grand Prix for no gain. It's not like we give out the fastest lap point anymore. He decides to set the fastest lap on the very last lap of the race, which just shows how much more he could have delivered if he needed to. And I'm sure that lap that he delivered wasn't him at 100% because why would he be at 100%?
And the tyres have gone a bit, but the fact he's still able to extract that much out of 30-lap-old tyres it's just laughable. Monaco just becomes laughable, and it's the opposite of what we want racing to be in Formula One. I want cars flat out, wheel to wheel, fighting in every way possible to reach the top. You can't do that in Monaco.
I was fine with the experiment as well. I was fine with them trying something different because I'd much rather they tried it and we decided, nope, that isn't going to work than nothing at all. But there is a growing thing with Monaco, which is just, like you kind of said, it doesn't matter how many rules you try and change to manufacture drama and entertainment. You can't take away from the very fundamental issue, which is the race circuit. Like you can add, I was going to ask, could we tweak this next year? Could we try something a little bit different? Like Martin Brundle suggested, if one of those pit stops has to happen in the first half of the race. To me, it feels like
you're over-engineering something then.
If you have to over-engineer something to that point, it's fundamentally not good enough.
Yeah.
Would you like to see them try something?
Well, now I'm getting into farcical territory here. I'm getting into fantasy world. But, the shape of the racetrack, when you get down to the start of the tunnel section, you obviously have that right turn where we saw Gabby Bortoleto hit the barrier. And then all the way, you carry on through the racetrack and you get to Rascasse. Imagine if you built a temporary structure that went across the harbour and it was just a flat-out straight line section where Anthony Nogues became the final corner and that was a braking zone. And you could at least get some wheel-to-wheel action. You could at least get a braking zone and a DRS section to overtaking. I think they have to change Monaco as its fabric. They need to alter the fabric of what is Monaco right now. It doesn't work, or we need a completely different set of car regulations to make it work.
I can't remember the contract extension that Monaco got quite recently.
Quite a few years. I think it was at least 5.
Yeah, they're not going anywhere. So it's going to be, even if I advocate for not having it on the calendar anymore or significantly changing the weekend, they're going to have to work within the confines of the contract that they have. And we're going to have to think about ways in which it can be improved whilst it's here.
Yeah.
I think even defenders of Monaco would probably accept that for as exciting as Saturday's qualifying is, we still need to make an effort to make Sundays more exciting than whatever the hell that was.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the top 4 that started this race finishes the top 4 that ended this race, and it didn't change. And that tells you everything you need to know, that even with this 2-stop and different strategy calls and whatever, the result was the same.
Yeah. I mentioned to you before we started, it's going to be very difficult to review all of these drivers on our Power Rankings episode on Patreon tomorrow, because so many of them were just stuck in a queue with kind of nothing to do until pit stops came about and you close up the gap to be on the end of the train. It's going to be very challenging.
It will. Link in the description. Tune into that one. Maybe you can help us muddle through it and work out who actually did a good job and who we think didn't. It's hard to tell.
Should we focus a little bit on one of the particular games that happened, because we're talking about teammates working with one another to secure a better result for the team. We saw that with Williams, but before we saw it with Williams, we saw it against Williams with the Racing Bulls team.
We did.
So Isaac Hadjar, a better qualifying position than Liam Lawson, although both of them inside the top 10. Hadjar essentially able to work with a gap that Liam Lawson intentionally left him, with everyone behind Lawson in 9th, kind of stuck behind him, allowed Hadjar to pit twice. First for the soft compound tyre, which we didn't see a lot of today. And then secondly for a hard compound, which he went a long way into the race with and ultimately saw off Esteban Ocon to finish P6. How impressed were you with what they were able to do with the conditions that they had?
When it first kind of became obvious that this is what the plan was, initially I thought, wow, strategy masterclass from Racing Bulls here. I thought they thought of something that no one else has thought of. And I, going through the journey of the race, thought, really clever. This means that Hadjar is going to get the jump on Alonso, on Behrman. It keeps him in contact with Hamilton. There's a real chance here that he's going to be able to get into the top 5 potentially with how this race is going to unfold. Brilliant job. And then over time, it started to dawn on me that is this the type of strategy I want to see in help to get positions down the line? We are driving, as we've already mentioned, 6-7 seconds a lap slower to make sure this happens. And what was crazy, you saw it specifically with Albon getting away from Sainz, was that within about 3 laps, they had the pit stop gap. And then they come in, do the pit stop, and within about 10 laps, they've done.
It didn't take long.
No, that's the thing. Usually you think, all right, this might take half the race to get that gap to really build out. You know, it's going to be a real touch and go moment. That's how slow they were going. And so that's why I've come to the conclusion is whilst I think they were brilliant to bend the rules, you know, to how they wish to use them. And that is what Formula One is all about. You see a set of rules and you go, how do I maximize this for my team, for my drivers? How do I score the most without breaking the rules, but bending them to that absolute end that they can go to? And Racing Bulls did that first, and they did a brilliant job of it. And both cars finishing well inside the points. I think they've moved into 6th place in the championship for it. But overall, because of the way the rules were set out, again, it just led to poor racing, and it was frustrating. But fair play to Racing Bulls for being the first to do it. They executed it brilliantly, and it was really successful for both their drivers. And Hagler, I think, had an absolutely blinding race. His pace was electric the whole way through. Did great on that soft tyre to mitigate the that middle stint. And then he did a good job at just holding off the pressure from the cars behind for the rest of the Grand Prix. Unfortunately, that Hamilton, for them, did such a great job when he got released into free air and they didn't let a position go. But overall, I don't think there's much more that they as a team could have got out of this Grand Prix.
No, I thought they did a phenomenal job, and really, I've criticised Racing Bulls quite a bit, not only this year but last year, because I feel like they are often on the back foot when it comes to strategy, and I think it's cost them a lot more than it's helped them to get points finishes. But here, you know, they were the best team in pulling off that strategy. They clearly thought that one up overnight when they saw the qualifying positions and saw what they were able to do with Liam Lawson almost sacrificing himself to an extent. I mean, he's still finishing the points as well, but you're essentially taking away his chances of finishing any higher than what he did. I mean, it's interesting because they said at the beginning that he was on the soft tyre, that he wasn't in the end.
Yeah, the computer got it wrong, didn't it?
I figured that he might go on the soft tyre if he was trying that strategy, but you know, it was really, really effective. And like you said, when there's 5-second delta or so between a car properly pushing and a car that's just you know, trying to back everyone else up, 5 seconds, you can in 10 laps pretty much make 2 pit stops.
Yeah.
And
that's obscene.
10 out of 78 laps. Like,
yeah.
It's not a lot of the race at all.
And then that 2-stop strategy that they wanted to employ to make the race interesting is null and void.
Yeah.
It's completely removed.
But you know, even though I don't like what happened, I've got to respect them for doing it. They were, like you said, the first team that really started playing these games, and they're the one that has pretty much gained the most from it. They really locked down those 2 positions inside the top 10. And for a team like Racing Bulls, securing 12 points today, that's a lot of points. That's a lot of points.
Back to midfield team, that's a great haul, especially at a track like Monaco.
Indeed. As you mentioned in the first segment, the top 4 all finished where they started, with Lando Norris taking victory ahead of Charles Leclerc, Oscar Piastri in 3rd, and then Max Verstappen in 4th. Let's start with the top 3, because Lando Norris, well, it didn't start particularly well, even though he held the lead. It was a big old flat spot going into T1.
Anywhere else on that calendar, I think you paid the price. I think the car in 2nd place would have gone straight up the inside. In this case, of course, it's Leclerc. I think if that would have been done at Monza, if that would have been done at Bahrain, anywhere else like that, you've got multiple lines that you can take to get a switchback or whatever you want it to be. The attack is on. You'd be under pressure big time because it's Monaco. You get away with it. The other thing, of course, is he has ruined that set of tyres immediately. He'll be feeling some vibrations. He'll be running through flat spots. But because it's Monaco and you can just tyre save, and he didn't tyre save as much as I thought he would, you can kind of mitigate it. You can run through it. So he did make a mistake, but that was pretty much his only mistake of the entire Grand Prix, and it didn't come back to bite him. So he got it out nice and early.
Yeah, and, you know, the start was always going to be very important for Lando Norris. It's not like turn 1's a massive opportunity. We very rarely see the leader beaten into turn 1 here. But with Monaco, relative to the rest of the race, it can be a massive opportunity. So Leclerc got a great start, I thought, and Norris actually got a pretty good start as well.
Yeah.
And then obviously he had the flat spot into turn 1, but I think he did very well. And if he'd got the same start as Oscar Piastri got, I don't know if he is keeping turn one. So
Piastri was lucky, man.
He
was lucky it's Monaco.
Yeah, because I mean, Verstappen was on his outside.
And Hajar was right there with him.
Yeah, so it was still important for him to get a good start, and that's exactly what he did. For the rest of the race, I thought he controlled things as well as he could have done. So he comes in for his first stop on lap 19, very safe. Second pit stop comes a little bit later than some of his rivals, but again, it built up a gap that it was never really going to be an issue. So it's difficult to. It sounds very nonchalant and he held on to the lead. It's still highly impressive what he was able to do.
For me, what impressed me the most about Lando Norris today, and it was a really impressive performance, was the way he mitigated the traffic.
Yeah.
Blue flags were, it felt like a bit of a premium around here today. It felt like cars were having a real moment before being told to get out the way. And we saw it in free practice. We saw it in qualifying with impeding, how quickly you can go from being behind a car, needing them to move out the way, and contact happens, or they block you off so much that you touch a wall and it's damaged. It can happen in a split second, especially at Monaco, and that's one of the brilliances of Monaco, is the risk factor that you get. So at any moment, a road car changing line or not getting the message properly could have cost him the whole race. So he got through that traffic so well. He didn't lose too much time where it put him at risk through a rogue overtake. And you saw Ollie Behrman, I think, is a good example. He was trying to play the game of when the car in front of me that's lapping goes past, I think it was Stroll in front of him, I'm going to try and follow him through to get a move done. Even something like that could have tripped him up, and it didn't. So well done to Lando Norris, really well executed. Not much more he really could have done. He got through every problem really well.
And in terms of the Drivers' Championship, because he finished ahead of Piastri last week as well, he's essentially gained 13 points on Piastri over the last two races, the first two races of this triple header. It leaves him in a position where he could retake the championship lead going after Spain, right?
We have a real fight on our hands. 3 points between them, which is really exciting. The McLaren boys have done a good job at keeping this championship alive for us viewers. Thank you. And this is what we wanted to see. Lando Norris has come back into this triple header. He let his head drop a little bit coming out of that. We had that gap going into Miami. And actually, he got beat by Piastri in Miami, and he's turned it around. This is really promising, really reassuring that actually he's able to take the fight back to Oscar, who looked like all the cards are in his hand, and he was able to kind of control the situation. Piastri's going to need a good performance in Spain. He's going to need to bounce back, because I think this whole weekend he didn't have the ability of what Lando Norris was able to deliver.
I think you're absolutely right. He had a really scrappy weekend. He said after qualifying that he'd never hit as many walls in a race weekend in his career. He never seemed at one with the car. The rear of the car was all over the place at various points this weekend. He's finished third.
He has.
And that's the mark of someone who's very good at this sport.
How many times do we say about Lewis Hamilton, years gone by, Mr. Consistent? You're not winning, you've got to be second or third.
If you'd, I think, read out to Oscar Piastri how much I think he struggled this weekend, and then told him, what position would you say you finished? And then you told him third, he'd go,
I'll take it.
All right.
I could have been in a wall. I mean, 1 centimetre more on a few of those oversteers, and he's losing.
Including today.
That Sandoval, when he oversteered and the back wheel clipped the outside wall, I thought that could be game over. That's a suspension snap immediately. But no, he's still in it, so 15 points for him.
You minimise the damage on the weekends where you're not at your best.
Yeah.
This might have been his worst weekend of the season so far?
Even Australia, where he had the mistake.
He was better and made a mistake, I think.
And I still think the mistake a lot of the time is just he was a bit unlucky with how it affected him with the rainfall, and it didn't affect anyone else. This was his worst weekend so far this season, and he walks away still championship leader. Can't complain.
Not too bad at all. What about the driver that finished in between them? Because Charles Leclerc and Ferrari haven't had a lot of success so far this season. Charles Leclerc has had one podium going into this weekend.
This is their best result so far.
And this is the best result so far, but a second place rather than a win that Leclerc was obviously looking to emulate from last year. Because I believe he won last year.
Yeah, he did win last year. I think the grandstands rose around him as he watched them as he grew up.
Yes, insert hairdresser quotes.
You got a haircut before this race, I'm sure.
Yeah. What did you make of Charles Leclerc and what Ferrari were able to do, or I guess not do, with him starting in second?
I felt quite sorry for Charles Leclerc. because if Ferrari were on it, which is a rarity here, Hamilton was already put down the order due to this impeding on Max Verstappen, of course, during qualifying. And if he wasn't, I very much think that they could have played a bit of a, driver A, driver B scenario of Hamilton hold everyone up as much as possible, immediately drop Leclerc into there. And I think they're on their A game there. I think they were willing to do that kind of strategy. But because he didn't get past him in the first corner, Leclerc and Norris, that is, he was stuck behind him. He was playing second fiddle the whole time. And the gaps never emerged in the right way that Leclerc was able to then go, I'm going to undercut and I'm going to go for it. It just never played out the right way for him. I do think any other racetrack, Leclerc had the pace. If you put Monaco on a track where it was a bit wider, Leclerc had the pace to get past Norris again. I think there were lots of times where he was faster than Lando Norris. But unfortunately, time passes, tyres go off, and Lando Norris was able to, of course, absorb the pressure and did so brilliantly. And that meant that he could then pull away from Leclerc once the free air became his again. So felt a bit sorry for him. Pretty much did everything he could. And apart from some strange daring strategy from Ferrari, which might have risked it even more so for them, I don't know if there's much more they could have done as a team.
And that last point is kind of where I was thinking, because could they have done something a lot riskier? Yes. Was there much point in terms of risk reward? No, there wasn't. If it was a one-on-one fight between Leclerc and Norris, I would have been disappointed that they didn't try something a little bit different, because that's essentially what they did. They matched the strategy of the McLarens, but it wasn't a one-on-one fight. Piastri was within touching distance, and so was Verstappen. So with the very small chance that you can do something a bit silly and get first place, it was far more likely they try that and lose second and maybe lose third as well. And given that Ferrari haven't had a lot of podiums so far this year, and they are still very much in a fight with Red Bull and with Mercedes, it absolutely made sense for them to play it somewhat safe and just pick up the 18 points on a weekend where they've been more competitive than at any point so far.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, makes no sense whatsoever. No sense. But especially on a weekend where, Mercedes really struggled, but also not just because qualifying went horribly wrong, like, they're on a bit of a downturn right now, Mercedes, and we'll get into them a little bit later on. And Red Bull still only have one car in that championship fight. Ferrari are probably looking at today's result and today's performance and saying, we can't really afford to try something overly risky, because both of those teams in front of us, they are catchable. So I don't blame them for not trying something.
No, 28 points out of this haul from them is really, really good. Yeah. And I actually think the strategy that they employed with Lewis Hamilton was brilliant. It got him in front of that little bit of traffic that he got put back behind due to his penalty. And I think fifth today, it wasn't the maximum he could achieve, and we'll get onto that, but he did a really good job of getting past Alonso and Hadjar and getting away from Ocon as well. So they were safe, they were sensible, and they put just enough risk, enough proactiveness into their strategy to gain as much as I think was feasible rather than outright possible.
Yes. I should probably have the jingles loaded. What a great idea that would be.
Harry, please come back for just jingles.
Also, the soundboard is kind of like slanted, as Sam will be able to see. So yes. I'm having to work.
You're at a 90-degree angle here to the soundboard, folks.
And we're not going to be able to hear it either.
We're not. So we're going to pretend that we're going to dance to it.
It's time for Driver of the Day.
The verdict is in. You're the driver of the day. You're the driver of the day. You're good at
driving.
Driver of the day. Who have you got?
I'm going to have to go with Lando Norris. It's Monaco, man. It's a tough one, really, to distinguch about who did a good job.
Monaco, baby.
Monaco, baby.
He should have been disqualified for that. I'm sorry. Disqualify straight away.
Even when Jensen did it, it wasn't great. But it was Jensen Button. You can't get away with it. You stole it, man.
Congrats, Charles Leclerc on the win.
Yeah, well done, my guy. Well done, mate.
Sorry, Lando.
Incredible. Piastri extends champ. No, okay. Norris did a great job for all the reasons I stated above in the episode. Soaked up the pressure, delivered on the strategy, maintained the league where he needed to. Apart from on that one turn one, he did not put a wheel wrong.
Yeah, I'll go with Lando Norris as well, just to shout out a couple more names. Hadjar did a great job to finish here in P6 and gain 8 more points. I have to say with him as well, not just about this race, but for the full season, we've complimented his pace quite a lot, and rightly so. he's really switched on. Like
He is quite good at that, isn't he?
he doesn't give off rookie.
No.
Like Antonelli, as good as he is,
Yeah.
and Behrman, as good as he is, they're still rookies, and you can tell.
Yeah.
Hadjar does a very good job of
He's just
staying out of
just
trouble.
there, isn't
and-
he? He's a consummate professional.
Yeah.
He's calm, gets the job done. If you were to stick him in one of the big teams right now, maybe not with Red Bull's weird second seat situation, but a normal
Stay away.
big team where both seats are equal, I think he'd fit in really quickly. I think he'd deliver a job, and I've been so impressed with him this season. He's really the rookie that stood out to me above and beyond. Every race we go to, he gets better in my eyes. I'm so impressed.
Yeah, so he was a consideration. I'll also go for the two that finished below him as well, Ocon and Lawson. So I'm not sure how Ocon scored points, but he has. So congratulations to him. And Liam Lawson, he's done a great job.
Well
executing
done,
strategy.
Liam Lawson.
So,
He's actually there. He qualified well.
first points of the season.
First points of the season. He really helped the team out. Again, we've stated we don't like it, but there are rules to play by, and he certainly played those rules, and he was the first to do it, and he did it brilliantly. The fact he's still ending up only a couple of places behind his teammate, we've given Lawson a lot of stick, and I think it's time to give him a little bit of praise. That was a really, really well-delivered performance from Liam Lawson.
Now, according to my soundboard, we are going to go to WDOTD, also known as Worst Driver of the Day.
Thank God.
Get in the bin. Worst driver of the day. Worst driver of the day. You suck at driving.
Thank you for that.
You suck at driving indeed. But who are we giving it to, Sam?
There are a couple of teams that really fumbled the bag on this one. And when the strategy was so poor, it's hard not to go for a team that was struggling with that. But I'm going to go Georgie Russ. On a season where he's been the most consistent and the guy that has been burgling all day long, to quote Harry Eid, and the guy who has just been popping up out of nowhere where he almost shouldn't be. It wasn't great to start with, obviously. I know the car conked out. It wasn't his fault that he was down there. But I thought out of all people being really vocal, really pulling the strings, he will try something different. He will throw a risk out. He will try and do something that no one thought of. And they just sat there and sat there and sat there. And then when he quite clearly intentionally cut the chicane outside the tunnel, the Nouvelle chicane, I have to put all the blame on him to then get a drive-through penalty. And then the fact that Antonelli got sacrificed for him to finish 11th place. I just think it's a bit of a joke. Just think it's a bit silly. And it's not what I'm here to see. So sorry, George. Love you normally, but this was not your finest.
I'm finding Worst Driver of the Day very difficult because I look at Russell and Behrman and Colapinto, Bortoleto, Hulkenberg, like they were just all waiting. And we can't really get a true indication of what any of their pace was. Sonoda's in that group as well. Antonelli, of course, was sacrificed. So it's really tricky to say who was out and out the worst driver of the day. I've kind of narrowed it down to two. Lance Stroll is one because he might have been the only person a part of the train that managed to not become a part of the train because he couldn't keep up with the car ahead.
Boy, he's slow. A car that clearly worked as well. Alonso was having a good time.
But then the other guy, and I'm a bit hesitant without giving it another watch, but Pierre Gasly looked like it was his fault.
I need to really sit down and watch this. He blames Tsunoda for moving under braking. We see one of these every few years where a car goes straight into the back of another car going into that braking zone. Didn't look good as the attacking car.
Yeah, and he was all over Yuki Tsunoda at that point, and I think he saw an opportunity to be at the head of that strategy. And honestly, I don't know if it would have worked out because with Yuki Tsunoda, it didn't work out. So it probably wouldn't have done, but I'll go Gasly tentatively. Big brain Strat.
Bob, we're gonna need you to box for wets. What? It's not even raining out. What are you talking about? Yeah, and Bob, if you get a chance, let your teammate pass you. What? He crashed.
Okay, I think we're done. Not yet.
Not as easy to sing along to that one, is it, Kirsty? Big brain Strat. What have you got for this one?
Well, I can either be serious with it or I can be not serious with it. Serious one is Racing Bulls. They were the first to manipulate the rules and get paid off absolutely brilliantly, and that's who I'm going to give the reward to. The not serious one is George Russell cutting the corner and having a drive-through penalty. That was audacious and stupid.
Funny, though.
It was funny.
I had a good and a bad one. My good one was the same as you.
Yep.
VCarb and what they were able to do. The bad one, it's Monaco. And we've introduced the mandatory two-stop strategy.
Hold on, Ben. Who was it that didn't do the mandatory two-stop strategy?
Bortoleto pit 3 times. What? How do you 3-stop at Monaco?
He must have, when he had that incident, he must have shredded those tyres and they just couldn't have kept it alive.
I think it was the case where they didn't have enough tyres to get it done, because they had to use the soft compound before. I'm not sure if they re-put on the hard tyres that he was on before the soft tyres. That would have made sense. But oh god,
everyone else was able to.
Yeah. And you know what's really funny? He 3-stop and was involved in a first lap incident that cost him a hell of a lot of time. He has beaten 4 cars on track and 2 retirees. This race was bonkers.
I also bloody loved his move around the outside of Antonelli.
More on that a little bit later on. Max Verstappen finished in 4th, started in 4th as well. Tried to make something of this, but ultimately pissing on the penultimate lap for the 2nd time, and goal hanging for a safety car didn't quite work out for him.
No, it didn't. And you know what? He tried something different. And actually, I got flashbacks of Hamilton versus Rosberg at Abu Dhabi, where Hamilton was driving as slow as humanly possible to get Rosberg to get overtaken by Vettel. I'm trying to win a world championship, man. And it didn't work then, and it hasn't worked now. Unfortunately, love the idea that they were trying to, I don't know, trip over themselves or cause a yellow flag or something. He tried to think outside the box, but just didn't go his way. And sometimes that happens. And Monaco, waiting for a safety car is somewhat of a viable strategy. It can work, and we've seen it work, but this time, not so much. Other than that, he was kind of stuck in no man's land with where he should go with it. The 3 cars in front of him were always going to be tough to beat. He kind of had the gap behind. 4th place is 4th place, really. I can't fault him too much for it.
Yeah, and he was in a bit of a corner strategically, because he didn't have what McLaren had, which was 2 sets of the hard compound tyre. And they were essentially in a position where they had to use the soft tyre at some point in this race. And fortunately for them, the race went a certain way that they only needed to use that on what was the last lap of the Grand Prix, starting on the hard tyre, which was different from the top 3, which I think was a good idea. They might as well.
Yeah, was it him alongside Hamilton all started on that strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. So he went a little bit longer on the first stint, and obviously then much longer on that second stint. And I think it was worth a gamble, particularly late on, because when he's in a position where Norris and Leclerc and somewhat Piastri are directly behind, his best chance of beating any of them at that point is them tripping over each other, them causing an incident to one another, something like that. Even a safety car at that point isn't really going to help him, because the benefit of new tyres, he's still going to come out behind.
He needs a red flag, doesn't he?
Yeah, exactly. So the VSC and a safety car wouldn't have even helped him then. So playing a game where, Norris and Leclerc might be battling for positions behind him, could one of them make an error? It made sense. The worst case scenario, he gets overtaken by one of them, which is going to happen anyway when he comes into the pits. So I don't think there was anything to lose. I think Red Bull were right to try something different, and it's not like it worked or didn't work.
I think he maybe could have been slightly more aggressive with the 2-stop earlier on in the race, and maybe hoped that he caught back up to them and they still need to make a second stop.
Well, but that would have come from, I think, their strategy early doors. So again, because he only had that hard tyre to use once, them using that on the first stint made going early on the pit stops quite difficult. The other way, I guess, they probably considered it. The other way to go about it would have been starting on the soft tyre and then almost committing to stopping very early in this race. But at that point, he might just get trapped in that massive long queue.
Yeah, it's definitely like a game of chance. You can't guarantee these things.
Yeah, I can understand why, probably knowing as well what the VCarb strategy was going to be, knowing that Lawson was probably going to try and back up half the field, he would have then been right to go longer on the first stint. So.
Yeah, I think they weren't expecting Hamilton to get such a jump on those guys as well and get in front of Hadjar, who would have been his next stop, of course, being part of the Racing Bulls family.
Speaking of Hamilton, not on the pace of Leclerc as we were going throughout qualifying, and then hit with a 3-place grid penalty for impeding Max Verstappen in qualifying. made up a couple of spots to eventually finish 5th. Is that all it had?
I think he had a really good recovery. I think the fact that he managed to get past those he was put behind in qualifying to a degree, obviously not Verstappen, was good. I think that was good. And Ferrari were really proactive. They read the situation really well with the way that Hadjar, Alonso and Ocon were running, with the way Lawson was back in that pack up. And like Alonso, they could have very easily been caught in the trap of, oh no, we're getting undercut, we need to pit as soon as possible. And Alonso did exactly that. Aston Martin did exactly that to Alonso, put him straight back into where he was trying to get out of, and you could hear his frustration. Poor Alonso.
He was fuming.
He is in a really bad spot right now, is Fernando.
Even his message at Imola, like, he maintained a certain level of Alonso about it. This was like a different tone to anything I'd heard of.
He's finally snapped. He's finally snapped.
I genuinely think he might have done.
Yeah, he's so angry. But the same thing could have been done to Hamilton, and Ferrari didn't fall into that trap, and Hamilton executed the strategy brilliantly in terms of unleashing the pace on those hard tyres the moment he got into the clean air. And once he did his first pit stop, they weren't competition for him anymore. He had come and gone. What frustrated me about Lewis Hamilton's race, I think he could have beaten Max Verstappen today. I think the way Max stayed out as long as he did, the way he was backing up Norris, Leclerc, Piastri, he was clearly driving much slower. I was surprised to see Hamilton on those medium tyres continually fall further and further and further and further away from Piastri, the back of Piastri. At one point, the gap, I think, when he came out of the pit lane was under 10 seconds. And then it so quickly turned into, oh, I've got some traffic, and then the gap's grown, and then the gap's grown. And then he was like 43, 44 seconds away from them. I just thought, where's your pace gone, man? Because I think he could have got the jump on Verstappen.
Well, they had the same compound of tyre on after Hamilton made his second stop, which was the medium compound. But Verstappen pit, I think, on lap 28. Hamilton pit for the second time on lap 57. So at least for a certain amount of time, Hamilton had essentially 30 lap fresher tyres.
And 20 laps to use them.
Yeah. So I understand that they weren't able to, in some disappointment that he wasn't able to at least challenge Verstappen for 4th. I thought the recovery was fine. I still think it's a touch worrying that he does seem to be quite consistently behind Leclerc. This isn't the first weekend that we've seen Leclerc have a couple attempts advantage. It's not always been the case. We have had a few races where it's been fairly close, but around here, Leclerc had the advantage from the off. And I still think Hamilton is searching for answers.
Yeah, I think it's the car. I think it's Hamilton's got to be happy in Formula One since the start of 2022, where we had this whole new set of regulations. And I think it's the same with a few drivers. I think Ricciardo fell foul to it. And because Ricciardo doesn't have the status or the success that Lewis Hamilton has, they weren't willing to sit with him. They weren't willing to be patient with him. Whereas Hamilton, who's still doing okay, he's still fine. There's nothing disappointing, really. He's just not on the level of Leclerc right now. But I think the current spec of cars as they sit, these big, cumbersome, ground force focused cars, they just don't suit the cars he learnt to drive as a Formula One driver. Who knows if that comes back in 2026? But right now, I think Hamilton's potential with what we see glimpses of it, Abu Dhabi last year, China sprint race this year. There are glimmers of it. If the cars are suited, you'll get that back next year. But for the rest of this season, I can't foresee him fighting with Leclerc on a regular basis.
Mercedes, let's move on to them. You've already somewhat discussed George Russell and the strategy that they tried to play. We've complimented them quite consistently this season for how consistent they have been in terms of point scoring. Absolutely nothing here today. George Russell finishes in 11th place despite a drive-through penalty. And Kimi Antonelli was the last classified finisher down in 18th. Oh, boy.
I can't remember a Grand Prix for Mercedes this bad, where they both finished the race.
Yeah, they were just stuff from the
They were stuffed from the start. Antonelli out, of course, in qualifying in Q1, gets through but can't set a lap again, obviously because of the damage. And then Russell's car kicks off and it just doesn't want to get going, and so he's out of qualifying. And at Monaco, there is no worse place that can happen than Monaco, but they've got pace in that car. I'm not saying it's good pace in terms of what we're used to. They weren't on the same level as Ferrari or as McLaren. I think Verstappen was better than both of them, but they had some pace in that car. And I was really shocked that they didn't go for an all or nothing approach of our two drivers are right next to each other. Let's just split it and go for something completely different, rogue, random, and try something out. And it felt like, I think this was confirmed over the Sky comms anyway, that their strategy was, let's wait and see what unfolds around us and then act on that, which in Monaco is so the opposite of what you should do. It's not proactive. You're not taking the matter into your own hands. And they started with no points. And because they didn't want to do anything different, they ended with no points. I guess was really disappointing. We've seen it previously with how poor they've been at calling strategy. It's come out here again today. They were a real victim of their own non-action.
I think they were doomed regardless. I don't think there's a version of that race where they score points. Because the alternative is they do what Tsunoda did. And
it's true.
It got nowhere.
But I would rather they had tried.
Well, I think they did try. They just tried the opposite. And I think they probably should have done is one of them did what they actually ended up doing, and one of them did what Tsunoda did.
Yeah.
But they went for the same strategy. They both started on the hard tires. But they were just, as soon as Lawson decided to play that game, everyone below Lawson was screwed. Like, there was no way that any of them were going to score points, or apart from the Williams that were already there or would have been there once Alonso
picked
retired.
Up, the Alonso place.
Yeah, but I just don't think there's a version of events where, and I honestly think that would have been true for absolutely anyone that qualified where they did. I think if Norris qualifies 14th or Leclerc qualifies 15th, they don't score points today because of the way in which that race unfolded with Lawson.
Yeah, he was the linchpin, wasn't he? He was the barrier.
You pit early, you just go to the back of that queue. You pit late, you're stuck behind the others, the V-Carbs and the Williams playing strategy games. You're just kind of damned if you do or don't. So really, the issue with Mercedes this weekend was Mercedes themselves for not giving George Russell a working car in qualifying, and Kimi Antonelli for crashing his car in qualifying.
But yeah, I mean, we discussed it on the qualifying review. I'm not sure that he was getting out of Q2 anyway.
I agree, yeah. And that is a bigger problem for Mercedes, as I don't think they did have brilliant pace this weekend.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried for Mercedes right now. They started this season really well for Mercedes standards at the moment over the last couple of years. They've done a really good job at solidifying themselves as kind of that, the next best thing, Mr. Consistent, always kind of picking up points where they can. And the last couple of races, especially here at Monaco, the pace has really started to drop off. But good things on the horizon, Mercedes fans. If you were falling out of a plane, what would you want to see on the ground? A giant
to Catalunya.
Sure, but in the shape of mattresses so you don't hurt yourself.
That turn one smooth.
It'll cushion you nicely.
Yeah,
you'll roll down it. Yeah. For Mercedes, Circuit de Catalunya, exactly, Ben. It is their home away from home. They never have a better time than when they do there. If the car's going to work somewhere, they know how to turn it on in Spain. So, fingers crossed for them that we get a bit of a fight. We get that fourth team back in the mix, and it's Ferrari, McLaren, Red Bull, and Mercedes, and we don't get another straggler.
Indeed. Williams, quick mention for them, 9th and 10th here. Obviously playing games after the Racing Bulls games. So Carlos Sainz took his turn to back up the field, allowing Alex Albon to do his 2 stops. They switch positions. Alex Albon backs up the field. Carlos Sainz does his 2 stops. And then they switch the cars back around to essentially work together to finish 9th and 10th.
Yeah, brilliant teamwork. Good communication. I really like the way that they actually swapped the positions on track, and it allowed Sainz to get off down the road and make his pit stops, and Albon had to deal with a bit more faff from Russell and Mercedes. He had to kind of had some issues that went his way, but at the end of the day, it worked out for them. They ended up finishing both in the points, and yet I still think they'll be disappointed. I think James Vowles is obviously frustrated by the way that the race played out with the way the rules worked, but I think Williams had the pace, they had the car, they had the drivers. And if qualifying went better for them, I think they easily could have maybe finished where Hadjar and Ocon were. I really think more points were on the cards for them.
Oh, yeah, 100%. 6th, 7th. That was easily doable this weekend. Albon, as we kind of mentioned in the qualifying review, if he just matches his Q2 time, he qualifies 6th, and then he's probably then in the same spot as Hadjar. And, Williams might have just done the same strategy that Vettel did.
Yeah.
Like, Carlos Sainz might have been the one backing up the field. Yeah. Or Carlos Sainz does a better job in Q2 and you've got 2 drivers out near the front. I think they were quicker than Mercedes were this weekend with them out the way. Really, they only had to contend with McLaren, Ferrari and Verstappen. Once you've got those 5 cars out the way, it's understandable to lose those 5 around here. You've got 6th and 7th, and that's 14 points, and instead they've come away with 3. So good strategic play in the situation they were in, 100%, but still some disappointment.
Yeah, they maximised the very little they could get their hands on after a poor Saturday.
It was a good strategy on the call, I thought.
Yeah.
A couple of smaller incidents. Bortoleto and Antonelli on the first lap. How did you see that one?
Yeah, let's break that down. Initially, I want to give some praise to the absolute filth of Gabby Bortoleto go around the outside of the Lowe's hairpin. Honestly, the whole of Monaco needs some rain after that. It all needs a wash because that was naughty. And I loved it. I thought it was so brave. That's what I want to see. That's the kind of rookie move that I want to go, wow, they're gutsy. They want to make a good impression and fair play. Then we had part 2. Now, that ended up being no investigation needed. And I think that's because of the new racing rules that we've got here. Because Antonelli launched it back down the inside. Gabby Bortoleto left the door open a little bit, but so did everyone else going into that corner. They all took the same line. Because you could be first to the apex, you get the corner. And that meant that Gabby had nowhere to go. Bortoleto puts it into the wall. He's lucky he's still in the Grand Prix. And that's it. That's all she wrote. If I were to make the rules of Formula 1, I think Antonelli's at fault for causing an incident there. But that's not the case, and the rules are the rules, and therefore, Antonelli was more than enough alongside, and Gabby Bortoleto is the car on the outside, and therefore, he is right to the corner and he goes straight back.
I'll confess that I haven't rewatched a particular incident before I say this, so apologies if this is wrong or there is something very different between these two scenarios. What was different about this year's Bortoleto versus Antonelli compared to Ocon versus Gasly?
I'll let you know. It's contact between the two cars. That's the difference.
Because, and to be clear, that was on Ocon, and I thought rightly so, because he was diving up the inside and there was contact, and I think Ocon was to blame. I don't see that incident as any different from this one.
If Bortoleto turns in as a normal line and there's contact, we'd all be blaming Antonelli for having a risky move, a silly move.
And he had to go very late on the brakes in order to get that done, to the point where Bortoleto was already braking when Antonelli was not alongside.
And this is that whole dive bombing the apex to show that you're there first, right? I don't care if I'm, making the corner, if you're making the corner, if my wheels hit that apex ahead of yours, I've claimed the corner. It's my corner. That's what the rules feel like they're saying at this point.
Yeah, I think that move is on Antonelli. I personally think that's on Antonelli. Equally, at the same time, with Bortoleto, with the rules of racing that they are right now, I think he should have done a better job of backing out.
Be more firm, though. But he should have gone, I need to just for one corner make sure I've claimed this properly.
Yeah.
He should have been more. He was proactive enough to get the move done into the Lowe's hairpin. Think the next step ahead. He's going to be like, right, I want to get that place back. He's going to be aggressive. Shut it down. He made a great move. He should not then immediately be throwing it away because he's been too passive going into the next corner.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Shall we review our bold predictions?
Okay.
Unfortunately, this relies on me remembering what Harry's was.
Harry's was that both Aston Martins would score points.
Oh, yeah, good job, Harry. One of them should.
One of them should have done.
After you cursed Alonso yesterday, of course, that was never going to happen.
When the engine rang up, I did think about that line.
I told you, you can't say that.
I won't say it for Spain.
We'll see. It's his home race. He's no way scoring points at his home race. So Harry was very wrong.
What was yours, Ben?
I'm so annoyed by mine. Mine was already over yesterday, so going into today, it wasn't up in the air. But I said that Esteban Ocon was going to qualify inside the top 6. Going into qualifying, I thought I had absolutely zero chance because that Haas was not as quick as I was hoping it might be here. But he makes it through Q1, and then he makes it through Q2. Thank you very much to Mercedes and Tsunoda for making that happen. And then in Q3, he sets a belter of a lap. He's very good around here, Ocon. He sets a belter of a lap and he finishes 8th and he is 0.019 behind 6th place. I swear, how many times do I hit the post on these balls?
Yeah. If there was a woodwork challenge, you'd be like 10-0.
Oh, boy. And I mean, yours wasn't far off.
I was really disappointed. I said that Isaac Hadjar will finish in the top 4. I should have said top 6 because even that would have still been punchy. But it's when Hamilton got that penalty and he started 5th.
Yeah.
I thought this takes one driver to go into Saint-Deveau too fast in front of him, and he's got it. I mean, and it just didn't happen. They were bulletproof up front. He ends up 6th, had a great race. So yeah, I just miss out as well by a really close margin. So it stays the same.
Sadly so. But more bold predictions coming in our preview episode for Spain midweek. It's time for moments of the race. Thank you for all of your submissions. Very much appreciated.
We haven't done our own.
Oh, yeah, good point. Did you have a moment of the race?
I don't know if I did, mate.
Right. That says a lot, doesn't it?
That does say a lot. Bortoleto's move around the outside of Antonelli. I thought that was brilliant.
I actually genuinely did have something written down. Which one shall I go for? Oh, you know what? It was really late, but great. I was worried we weren't going to get a golden piece of Ferrari team radio, but how far am I behind? Charles is on mediums. What?
I've asked a question you've not really answered there, okay? But thanks.
Yeah, how many seconds am I behind? Oh, yeah. So Charles Leclerc's on mediums.
Just answer the damn question, man.
Cool. All right.
Not relevant.
How many seconds is that then?
Mediums in time. What does that mean?